right, we ask that you please take a moment now to silence your cell phones out of respect for your fellows. I should probably do that. We will now pass the basket in honor of our 7th tradition, which states every AA group ought to be self-supporting, declining outside contributions. $15 will go towards rent of this meeting space, and the rest will go towards District 17. And then the AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. All right, welcome to the Racine Area Archive Speaker Meeting. Consistent with Alcoholics Anonymous General Service Archives mission, our purpose is to document permanently the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, to make the history of the organization accessible to AA members and other researchers, and to provide a context for understanding AA's progression, principles, and traditions. We will meet here at the Grove Club the last Sunday of every month. The first half of the meeting will be a Q&A period followed by a break. After the break, our speaker will resume sharing their experience, strength, and hope pertaining to a chosen page of the Big Book. This meeting will be recorded and stored at the Racine Area Central Office. A digital copy will be sent to the Area 75 archives. You may contact your District 17 archives chair to arrange access to the recordings. All right, is there anyone here with less than 30 days of sobriety? Please raise your hand. And this is not to single anyone out, but simply to welcome you. Anybody here? All right. Is there anyone here with more than 15 years of sobriety? Please raise your hand. All right, welcome you guys. The speakers selected for this meeting are old-timers. An AA old-timer is any member who has been continuously sober for a significant period of time. The definition of significant is open to interpretation and varies widely. For the purpose of this meeting, an old-timer is considered anyone with 20 years or more of sobriety. The old-timers' interviews serve as a representation of the significant impact that long-term sobriety can have on our AA community. All right, and without further ado, I will now introduce our speaker, James W. Thank you. Thank you. All right, and we've got some questions for you, James.
Here I am.
Okay, first question, what is your sobriety date?
August 3rd, 1986.
Okay. Awesome, okay. Who was the United States President when you joined Alcoholics Anonymous?
Ronald Reagan. Calm down, Republicans, calm down.
Question 3, when and where was your first contact with Alcoholics Anonymous?
I was thinking about that. My neighborhood, this is my neighborhood. I lived about 4 or 5 blocks south on Hayes Avenue, 1500 block. And the first I heard of AA, and this place was always there. I mean, it started when I was a young man, this club, and I just kind of avoided it because I thought it was a graveyard for old white winos and Skid Row drunks. I mean, that's what honestly, that's what we thought. But there was a friend of mine's dad, George, we found out he was coming here. He was coming to AA, and I didn't know how bad of an alcoholic he was, but that's when I first started hearing about AA, was through that. And then, even with like the first time I stepped into this club, I was 15 years old, and I remember me and my friend Jamie Fitz were smoking weed all day. And we looked like little puppies, even though the drinking age was 18, we wanted to play pool. And he said, I know a good place to come. We can play a dime a game, and he brought me to the basement of the Grove Club, and it ruined my high. That's all I'm gonna say. So I would, just my suggestion to you kids, don't get high and come to the Grove Club, it'll screw your high up. So that's all I'm gonna say.
All right. Question 4, can you describe what Alcoholics Anonymous was like back then compared to today?
You know, at its heart, I don't think it's any different. You know, I mean, it's, man, loving each other the best we can to help you get home and to connect to that power. But Well, we started this meeting at 8 o'clock. That's a big difference. So it's the 7 o'clock time is so much better. There's more to it than that. One of the things was back then, meetings here, it was a lot of fellowship based. There was some 12-step talk. Most of that I heard when I was in treatment at the ACE Center. But there was a real bond of older guys. There's some founders that were coming around here, Greg H., RT, quite a few of these guys that had helped establish this place. But it was very fellowship orientated. And the other thing I thought about this club, it seemed like it was always open. Like there was always somebody here. And I'm not saying it a lot, but I remember you could come here at 7 in the morning, there'd be people downstairs. Be here at 1, 2 in the evening, there'd be people here. There was no locks on the doors of this place at that time. So it had that vibe. The club meant everything, because, and also real quick, I don't want to drag it on too much, but at that time we had the Grove Club, the Alamo Club, and a couple church meetings. There was no RACO, no Benjamin House, no church, so this was it. And so we had a lot of people that came to this club. It was, meetings like this, it was pretty packed, almost all Sunday nights. So I guess that was the difference. Not as 12-step based, not that it was completely inept, but not quite as much as it is, I would say, now.
Okay. Fifth question. What were you like as a newcomer, and how do you think others would describe you when you were a newcomer?
They did describe me as, I remember my first sponsor, Frank, gave me a diagnosis, which was amazing for a self-employed roofer to be able to do, but he was the qualified man. He says, you're a oversensitive, arrogant, chicken shit boob. That's what his name for me was, and it fit well. I was a puke. I was scared of everything, but I didn't let you know that. I felt I was somehow different than every one of you. Somehow my case is a little more unique. And I'm not the first time I came to meetings here, I didn't think I was as bad as any of these guys. Because they were older, a lot of them, and I thought, I ain't gone through none of that. And my case was different, which is a dangerous phrase for any alcoholic to say. And I think, I was a young kid. I was 23 years old when I walked in these doors, and I was green behind the ears. But I think on the good side, I was always willing, and I always wanted to be engaged. And when I started being asked to do things, whether it was clean up the ashtrays, help this, go 12-step this guy, I don't remember myself saying no too much. And that was big, and I had a sponsor who kind of really encouraged me to be on the front line, but I was a puke. I really was in the beginning. I was scared, I was a child. I was 23 in my body, but emotionally I was probably 13, so.
Okay.
And that's what they would say, I guarantee it.
Question 6, who was your first sponsor and how did you end up with them?
His name was John Anderson, and I remember I thought he'd be the ideal sponsor because he DJ'd all the dances. Thought, hey, here's the perfect guy, man. And he was kind of a long hair, kind of beard, and very chilled and laid back. Nice guy, really nice guy. And at the time, basically, our sponsorship was I'd call him maybe once a week, every few days, report in on him, and he'd say, hey, sounds like you're doing good. Just keep getting the meetings and doing the right stuff, and that was my first sponsor. So John, he was a nice guy. He was a real good guy. He was always willing to be helpful. I would say he was a good example at that time for me of if you do this, what you can get from this. But a lot of it was just fellowship based and hanging around and going to his dances when he DJ'd. So that was my work at that time. So yeah, get a good DJ as your sponsor. That's the comment of that, right? And unfortunately, I don't know what's happened to John. I haven't seen John in years. So.
Okay. Question 7. Who were the alcoholics prominent in your early sobriety?
Boy, the list goes on. I got involved in a lot of meetings here. There was Billy Goat Bob. Who looked like Charles Manson's twin brother, and I just like disheveled people. I don't know why. I'm always untrusty of clean-cut ones until I became one. But big up Bob, because he was like this spiritual guru, and he would just had this eccentric thing about him. He was really key. Little Marty, Schmurf, he just had a joy about him, a smile, and I really liked Marty a lot. RT, Art Turkelson was one of the founders. He was involved in my first home group here. Uncle Dean R., who still, as far as I know, goes to meetings out at the Benjamin House. And he was actually my second sponsor. And he was just a good guy. You know, he's always here, he's reliable. And you think how long ago that was, and he's still involved in AA. There was quite a host of people. There was Mike and Ginger Wheeler, who were the starters of our 5:30 meeting, which used to meet in the corner room downstairs. I don't think the 5:30 meeting does that anymore. And they were just like, you know, all these people had in common. They were always willing on the get-go to do stuff for this place, to do stuff for 12-step calls. I remember there was another Marty D., who was also took me on my first 12-step call that, you know, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I went on it. It was he taught me how to work with the drunk and what we do. God, the names, I could go on for a lot of them. Greg H., whose brother Red came here, he was just very, very quiet, but really kind, helpful guy, had a really good influence on me. There was Bud, who became the president, Bud. Danny B. too. I was in treatment with Danny B., the late Danny B., who we just lost recently at the ACE Center, and he stayed sober, and I went back out and came, I think it was about a year later, and he really had a big impact on me. And and these are, again, people that connected me. There was also Bob and Karen Norbert, and I think Karen is still alive. She was sober, and bad things happened with Bob. It was sad. And these are like big people, pillars of the A community. And so, yeah, there were so many people. At the Alano Club, that's a whole nother thing. You had Frank Will, who was my one sponsor. And Frank didn't chew his cabinet. He would look at you in the eye and an ugly voice tell you. And Gordy, little Gordy, Irish Gordy. I used to love to hear his stories about being shackled and locked up and brought up to prison, so I didn't have to go through that. And there were some amazing characters. That's what I would say, Nick. These were just guys whose stories and lives, and this became an important piece for them to be a part of this. And they had a lot of love. They'd string me along and take me along for stuff, and I could go on. There's a lot of names I could be mentioning, but those were some of them. So.
Okay. Can you think of any AA catchphrases from back then that you don't hear anymore or don't hear as often today, and what did they mean to you?
Well, I think some of them I'm glad are gone. One was, this is a selfish program. And at that time, that worked for me, because I'm selfish, self-centered to the core. And I think, oh, that would be good. It's all about me, do what I want here, get what I want. And, I don't know where that started, because I believe it's quite the opposite. It's a selfless program. I think our whole thing is to stop being selfish, to have God take that by giving this thing away freely. That was definitely one. God rest his soul, Happy Fred. Don't pick up the first drink, go to meetings. I remember Fred, Happy Fred, that was another one. That was his catchphrase, and it worked for him. I realized that wasn't quite enough for me, just not picking up drink and going to meetings, that I had to get into this program, the 12 steps. But there was a few back then, and it was interesting. The one that always, I look back, this is a selfish program. And if you believe that, God bless you. That's okay. I don't myself, not with what I've learned. So.
Okay. Did you get involved in service early on? And if so, what did you do?
What did I do? I mean, we did a lot of stuff. I was the cleanup committees. I was involved in a lot of functions we would do. GSR. I was secretary for meetings. I remember Wednesday, I got to be the secretary for that meeting. It was interesting back then because we just passed them off to each other. We didn't have we need a new person, we're going to nominate somebody. I remember I forget who it was, said, I can't do this meeting anymore. You want to do it? Okay, I'll take it. And because I guess we probably didn't really know that the group should decide this. We just kind of took it upon ourselves. I also got involved in corrections, doing prison meetings when the Sturtevant prison first opened, and I wasn't real keen on that idea. Just to tell you, if you can look at me, I'm not really prison material. I'm not. I'm being honest, okay? And when they said, "Hey, James," and I remember Danny B and Green Dick, and there was a few of them. Another guy, Jerry Shue. I love Jerry. He was a big inspiration. But they're like, we want you to fill out this paper. I said, what am I filling out? Well, you're going to do meetings with us at the prison. I said, why would I do that? Go to prison on a nice night? Are you nuts? And there's been a lot of service work, but I'll tell you the impact that had on me. Because here's this guy, because a lot of times in AA, you don't want to do this stuff. You don't. But you do it. You know what I mean? If you're waiting to want to do it, you're probably never going to do it. And I can remember filling out that paper, and I thought, fill out the paper, and they'll just forget about me, right? Not them guys. And I remember they brought me out to the prison. I was, man, why am I here? All through the thing, I don't belong here, man. It's nice out there. I'd rather go to my Grove meeting. And so I go to this meeting with Green Dick. We walked into the meeting room, and all these guys come in, and all of a sudden I hear these guys talk, and the only difference between me and them was they got caught. I did all that same stuff, And the other thing I got, when I walked out of that prison, the gate shut behind me, not in front of me. It was one of the greatest lessons I got at that time of gratitude. And I got involved in that. And I've gotten to be in committees for doing the conference, being involved in that. And at that time, cleaning ashtrays, it all matters. That not one's bigger than others. I think, making the coffee, cleaning up cups, wiping tables down. I got to do it all, and I still do it. So.
Okay. What do you remember most about the first time you sponsored someone? I
didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had no clue. I just, and I don't know that I got direct, and his name was John. And the interesting thing, he's still sober, and it was weird. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and just by pure coincidence, I saw him yesterday. Really, my first thing of sponsoring him was I take him to the mall and take him to the arcade because he liked playing video games. I thought that was being a good sponsor. And that's what John and I did quite a bit. And then somebody said, well, James, there's a little more to it than that. Well, okay. But, at the time, again, but here's the cool thing. I learned, learning what not to do, I think, is as important as learning to do in this program, And it didn't cost him his life, thank God, because I wasn't telling him anything, was going to screw him up. I just took him and played video games with him. And I got a little resentful of that because he never had money, so I always had to pay for him, But the thing about it was that was my first experience, but it quickly evolved when I got a sponsor who did this, who worked the program. But that was my first experience that I remember.
Gotcha. Okay. And then this will probably be our last question before break. How about the first time you were sponsored?
That I was sponsored. And I talked about having John, and I'd been sober at the time about 6-7 months, and I'm not even going to say sober. I was probably dry. I hated my life at the time. I hated this job. I worked at this restaurant, the Village Inn. I'm making $3.25 an hour. My girlfriend hasn't come back. God, this AA stuff sucks. I'm still living with my parents, and I hated life. And all of a sudden, I was at a meeting downstairs, and I started blabbing about this and that. And this guy comes up to me afterwards and says, "James, are you working the program?" I said, "Yeah, I go to meetings every day. I go out for coffee afterwards. I've been to 90 dances in 90 days. I do it all, man, And I'm engaged in this thing." And he says, "That sounds like your program. Are you working the program?" And I was getting pissed at this guy because he was kind of brusque. He was like a young Mike Ditka, and I'm not a Bear fan. And he really challenged me, and he says, "Why don't you work the program?" And he goes, "Do you have a big book?" And I had got one at treatment that I didn't do much with. And that became, Frank really was my first sponsor because we sat at his kitchen table, read that book. He took me through that journey. What I always loved about his house, he lived on Blake Avenue. There was a 1 hour Martinizing dry cleaner. They had this big sign with an arrow, and the arrow pointed right to his house. When you're driving a certain way, it's like, yeah, time to go to Frank. And Frank, God bless him, I love this man to the day I die because he really explained things in there that nobody else had really done. In the program, the whole idea of this thing just shifted and changed. We did 4th and 5th steps together. He helped me with amends. And he challenged me. That was the thing. He was very direct, and he would tell me when I was full of crap. I remember when I was first to make amends, and I told it was my ex-girlfriend, I said, I think I already did that. And he looked at me, he says, well, if you and God are good with that, then don't do it. He just knew the right words to say because I wasn't good with not making that amends. We had a really good bond for a few years, and he kind of went away from AA, but that was the first time I was sponsored by somebody, and that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous was used to connect me to that power. And I am so grateful for that man today. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for answering those questions, James. We're going to go on a 10-minute break and come back to a page from the big book.
Okay.
All right, we're going to welcome James back up to the stage, and he's going to turn to a page from the big book and spend the remainder of our meeting time sharing his experience, strength, and hope on that reading.
Thank you. I want to thank all you who came tonight, my friends from Burlington. It's so beautiful. Represent Burlington. That's where I live now. My sponsor, his sponsor, people from my home group here in Racine. I got 2 home groups, and it kind of ties in with what I'm talking. And I want to thank Alex for wiring me up. It made me feel like it was back in 1978 when the Racine police were trying to give me that deal again, you know. I didn't take it. I was not a snitch, I'll tell you. Not me, because I'm not prison material, you know. So when I was thinking about this, there's so much in this book. You know, it's hard to break this thing down because it's a process, it's a flow. You start with these ideas and they lead you into things. But, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, alcoholism as the spiritual illness, which I definitely qualify. But the neat thing to talk about is the payoff. And this was impressed on me by these old guys. And my page is page 89, the first page of Working with Others, chapter 7. Practical experience shows us that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help them when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. Perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. Don't start as an evangelist or reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You'll be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim. I just like to do this real quick. Those guys who I sponsor, and guys that they sponsor, and is any, could you raise your hands, please? David, get your hand up. No, keep them up real quick, just for a second. And if you're sponsored by one of them, Chris, get that big glue can of yours up. There's a reason I do this, all right? These guys keep me sober. They ensure my chance of not drinking again. I have a wonderful sponsor over there. You can put your hand down, John. Thank you. He's a real good sponsor. Just pay attention, guys. I have been so blessed. You know, I talked to Daryl about this because Daryl has walked, I don't know, I think Daryl and I have been working together now for 33, 34 years, probably around there. My previous sponsor, Frank, kind of was getting out of AA, and he suggested that, he says, you know, your new sponsor should have less sobriety than you because you're so arrogant. You need some humility. And I was like, how dare you proposition such a thing, you know, me, you know. And I remember I was at a meeting, and I believe it was, he can quote me, I think it was at the ACE Center. And I seen Daryl walk in, and I knew Daryl a little bit. I knew he was real involved in this group that was real into working the book, and I just love his spirit. And it does it for me today. His love, and it's real. And I knew that. And so him and I have been on a long journey together. And then I look around here with these guys. Here's why it works so well. My problem, even to this day of 38 years of sobriety, is this. Right, Daryl? Yeah, thank you. I just need to kind of, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's all you, you know. I get so, at times today, you know, consumed with me. You know, and what happens, the danger of that is sooner or later, if that's where my sobriety or whatever that is, I'm going to have to drink to overcome that batch of sobriety. Because sobriety ain't going to be worth hanging on. But here's the amazing thing that happens, because I get into things. And some bad things have happened to me in 38, some painful things. You know, loss of both of my parents, divorce, I mean, health concerns. Losing a lot of close friends down here. And I'll even say it, losing a couple of my pets, my dogs. Them were hard ones. And there's many other things. And the amazing thing, I remember it was about a year ago, and I was in a midst of a divorce, and I was really just wrecked. And I had talked to Daryl that day, and he helped me. You know, Daryl always gives me, you know. But I was just in my head, man, and I'm just with this resentment and this, you know, fear, and I'm going to end up in Halo, and it's all going to be just a mess, and it's going to be so bad. And all of a sudden, the phone rings in my car, and John. And he says, I got some shit I need to talk to you about. I said, talk now. And I got to listen to him and his stuff, and he didn't know what was going on. I said, John, thank you so much for calling. He's like, well, I'm supposed to thank you because you're calling, you know, trying to help me. And I said, dude, you don't understand. Other things will fail you. It's just true. I don't think Bill wrote this based out of, I don't think, you know, if you just sit in enough meetings, you'll do well. And if that does work for you, God bless you, man. Cool. All these things we do, he says, they may fail us. This never fails. When it says, when all else fails, this will not. I remember Mark sharing this one time. I don't know how many times, and you know, Mark's done a lot. Mark and I have done a couple together, 12-step calls. You know, and some pretty hairy, one there where Mark went to go see the guy, and he died in ACE Center a couple of days later from detoxing. He was old, and I remember going to grab that guy from the basement of St. Luke's Hospital, and I could smell alcohol 30 yards away. It's coming out of his pores. And he came out, he was a frisky dude, man. He wanted to it was cold that night. Mark was dressed as like some sea monster or something. It was a Halloween night dance. And I can only imagine what this drunk slot, he probably looked normal to Mark, he was so drunk, you know. And the thing about it was, and I remember Mark telling me, sit in the back seat, because if he starts flapping his arms, I want you to wrap your arms around him. But we got him to the ACE Center. And Mark was a good AA, went a couple of days to see him, and he basically died from coming off of alcohol. And I remember he was, that night, he was frisky, he was like, I'll sleep in the woods, you know, he was, and me and Mark were like, come on, ACE Center, come, we want to get this guy in there. And we did. And, but the thing of these things is, when I'm doing these things, man, a lot of these people sometimes don't stay sober, it's a sad truth. But what's never failed, I'm still sober. Don't ever turn your back on this. And again, some people get uncomfortable with this idea, helping another. You may have something, if you have 30 days sober, and that guy's new, you got something he ain't got. How did you do 30 days? I remember somebody called me at 30 days. I'd heard I'm not going to take them through the 12 steps. I didn't even do them yet. But I said, I go to this Grove Club, man. They're really good people. They've helped me out a lot. I mean, I'm just in a better place right now. That was what I could do. That was giving what I could away. The thing about it is, we do got something special. That unfortunately, I remember going to being sent to shrinks. I remember being sent to doctors, and I remember being preached to. And these were good people just trying to help me. I remember seeing a cool dude counselor at the safe house when I was like 16, 17. My parents thought, I remember my parents trying to do an intervention on me. I'm going to tell you something. I feel sorry for those damn alcoholics on that show. Because, it's like, geez, yeah, let's just come down and just make them feel horrible. And, not that it isn't some truth, but it's like, I'll tell you how long I stayed in that intervention. I would say 37 seconds when I figured out what was going on. Because I'm a little slow. It should have only took me 2 seconds. But there's something unique we have. And it's interesting, we think the differences and not understanding. I heard a quote today that I was just sharing with my friend Lisa, that Albert Einstein said that the great common myth and mistake of humanity is that there's more than one of us. This has taught me the truth of how we're connected. It's such core, and I never would have understood it in any other way, because I'm so different. Oh, I'm not like you. I got type 1 diabetes. Oh my God, you don't know what that was like as a kid. Oh, my parents, they're the stuff they do. My mom forgets to get pecan Kringle sometimes when I need something good to eat. And I was going to report my mom for that, Child Protective Services. I was a bit spoiled. But there's all these things that I have this terminal that and it separates me from people. And it didn't start when I took a drink. That started as a very early age. From the time when I was diagnosed with diabetes, I was 4 years old, and that separated me from you. I was treated differently by my parents than my brothers were, because they loved me. They were cared. They had to give me more attention. But it was like, not just because of that. My alcoholism, I don't know if I was born an alcoholic, quite so. I know when I had my first drink, though, an alcoholic was born. I can tell you that right now. Because hallelujah, man, we have arrived. Me and Craig talk about this all, and I love my friend Craig. He's so awesome. We talk about this all the time, this idea of controlling drinking. That was never the deal. When I drank, it was for one thing. We heard a speaker, I agreed with this so much, I don't remember any times going to a drinking situation, being given a drink and saying, I'm good now. I can go now. I had enough. Go home. I was told that place was burnt down, if there was still booze. I remember one morning sitting in a basement floor that there was beer all over this part of it. And everybody's sleeping, it's 4 a.m. And I'm sitting wet from beer, just drink. I'm the last one awake, drinking that beer. And I thought I was the king, man. And that uniqueness is such a dangerous thing. Because I will different myself out of here. My case is different out of here in a lot of terms. But it's amazing, when I first came here, I heard voices, people talking, and I thought, holy shit. Yeah, that happens to me. I think that way. Yeah. Wow. And my parents couldn't do that for me. I don't consider my parents alcoholic. Them doctors, psychiatrists couldn't, but you people could. I have something unique to offer because of this experience. That ugly stuff, that stuff you're guilty for, you hate. And if you're newer, you may think that, it's the worst. That's your gold, man. That's some of your most powerful stuff. Because there may be somebody here walking through that doesn't know how they're going to stay sober, facing that kind of stuff. You guys who come in and out relapsed, and by fortune, that's not been me. But you guys have something for that guy who keeps coming in and out and doesn't know how to stay sober. You may be the one that you're staying sober now. Maybe, and you know what's going to do? It gets you out of this. I got to get out of this, man. What was the old thing we used to say? It's a bad neighborhood to go by yourself, take somebody with you. That is my story. I go up alone here sometimes in some ventures, and I would love to tell you, this was all before I came into AA. My alcoholism really came evident when I stopped drinking. That's when the evidence came. And what I love on here, life takes on new meaning. walking out of that prison like I shared before. The meaning that I went in there with changed just by that time I was in there. Because my meaning was, this is crap, how these old guys talk me into this, they're all dumb assholes. And I really felt that. I felt like they manipulated me. I'm like, yeah, right. They was trying to save my ass. That's what they were doing, to get me out of and I walked in there and I thought, man, I needed to be here tonight. Be willing to do things you're unwilling to do. And I get to watch this. I'm looking at these guys I sponsor. I've seen them go through some horrific stuff. Come in here, some of them beat up, tore up. Life is just, guys they sponsor, and all of a sudden, man, to watch people recover and see them help others. I'll share you a real cool story. I got a few of them, being around enough, I worked for this company years ago, and they had a guy come in, and his name was Dick Griffin. Anybody from Kenosha, if you've been around for a while, might know who Dick is, but he was a counselor, but he was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't know it. I only met this guy one time, and he was, man, this big guy. He was just like, had the grace, this calm and grace about him, and so I started talking to him, and I talked to him for about a half. I was just captivated by this guy. And all of a sudden, it was a weird thing. Years later, I'm sitting at this other job, and I'm just, afternoon, not doing nothing on the computer, and go to Kenosha and see what's going on in Kenosha. And I go to obituaries, and there's his obituary. It just passed. How does that happen? I hadn't thought about it. And his obituary said, they asked him in there, said, Dick, why after all these years do you still go to those meetings? And he said the most poignant thing, to keep the giving and getting circle alive. I had nothing when I came here. They gave me so much. Now I need to give it back. I love this. You won't want to miss it because it's a powerful thing, man. It's interesting, and I'm going to snitch out Daryl, but we were talking. He's in a different spot with this, but about sponsoring guys who've been around. I should let guys who have less sobriety work with these new guys, and he's like, yeah, that's what kind of. And I started to realize that I think we both did. Man, I don't want to. No, I want to work with that new guy. I want to experience that. I also like this part about because sometimes I'm guilty of this. We're going to sit here and wait for them to come in, right? Let's wait for the newcomers at the Grove Club. But what happens when newcomers come in? About 30 guys swarm them, like, oh, here, I'm Jim, here's my number, and I can help you, and you sit back, well, I ain't going to be able to work with him. Them 14 are sponsoring him now. But there's other ways. And I read that one time, and I thought about this. I was at a doctor appointment. I said, hey, Dr. Lopez, who's a really good doctor, and had been with me forever, and he knows my story. I don't hide it from them. And I said, if you ever know of anybody needs any help with this, here's my number, man. Have them call me. And it was interesting. The next time I saw him, he said, hey, he couldn't because of HIPAA laws, but he said, I gave somebody your number. Did you hear anything? And I said, well, no, I didn't. But here's the cool thing. I'm putting it out there. I'm leaving that channel open that maybe someday that guy might call me. Who knows, right? And I think the idea of this is like, for me, my Savior, because where does God want me to be? In my core, this book tells me, this is why I don't believe it's a selfish program. Selfish self-centeredness, that's the root of my program. Not my program. That's the root of my disease. Alcoholics, man, in our head, we are some very selfish, self-centered individuals. I don't think any alcoholic in this room is going to debate that with me, right? And how do I get out of that? Not by working a selfish program, a selfless program. And this is the ultimate test of selflessness. Sometimes to step out of my box, to be willing to do something even though it may inconvenience me. And I would like to tell you, I'm a shining star of that. There's times I failed at that. And I feel it in my conscience. Man, I should have done that. Why did I go there? And I want to listen to that conscience from now on. Dr. Bob wrote something very poetic about this in Dr. Bob's Nightmare. And he says, I spend a great deal of time passing on what I've learned to others who want and need it badly. He says, I do it for 4 reasons. And I love this. I mean, Dr. Bob, man, pretty cool story. One is a sense of duty. I need a sense of duty. if you leave me flapping in the wind, it ain't good, man. It's a pleasure, absolutely. I got this morning to do a fifth step with somebody. And it wasn't like, oh, I gotta, it was so cool to connect, to bond. You know, like I told him, as we keep doing this work, we get to get deeper into the truth. I get to know a little bit more about him. But also when he's doing that, I'm sharing about me to that person, which is cool. He's knowing me at a deeper level. I mean, I look at Daryl, the depths, Craig, some of these guys who we stay so connected, Josh and David, it's like getting to know each other at deep levels. It's cool. Because in doing so, I am paying my debt to the man who took time to pass it on to me. What more of a reason, you know? I think about, and not just individuals, but those people who passed it on to me, who are patient with me, who are willing to tolerate my babbling in these meetings, for God's sakes. I was one of them guys, 3 months sober, you know, I got it now, man. Shit, 3 months, I'm on top of this. I got a car now, Mike, you know, and I might be dating that one girl once she gets out of treatment. Yeah. All right.
Finally, the truth.
Well, I had to keep her away from you, so, you know. But it's cool. Mike and I love Mike. Mike's a good man, good AA. But, you know, it's like I was this babbling guy, you know, and all this crap and thinking this is what it is. And this is the stuff that really, the people that passed it on to me, that was tolerating me, yeah, I owe them something, man. Absolutely. I owe them my life. So for me to turn my back and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I can't. Now look, with the cool thing about being connected and having a lot of people in your life, what if I can't? There are times that happens. You know what? I'm going to have him call Josh. I think he'd be good for Josh. I'm going to have him get a hold of Craig. I got these numbers. I got, you know, that I can connect these guys. That's so cool. Here's the other thing, and what we talked about. It just repeats what I read. Because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. What price am I willing to pay to stay sober? What am I willing to pay on my policy, man? You know, I mean, to me, it's like to get the life that I've got, even with the struggles, to be able to do this work, be connected with people. I mean, how does a dopey goof like me get this kind of thing? I mean, it's God's grace, truly. It's God, you know, it's a simple equation that, just simple semantics. If I do these things, these are the kind of things that happen. I stay sober. It's not like a mystery when you come here. Well, let's not give the guy the secrets that we have found. Let's hold on. Let's see if he's serious enough and really wants them. You know, we're just gonna, it's here, man. It's simple. Just be willing. And that's the whole perplexing thing. We were talking, I also didn't talk, you know, and Nick was asking me questions. There's a lot of people who I looked up to who died in this program from alcoholism. I still look up to them. I don't see them as, because I'll tell you, some of them guys, Buddy, I could go on and on, names after names. Guys have been sober, were sober for years, less, I could go on and on. The amazing thing about those guys, they got a piece of this. They did some cool things for other people. They're not here, they live on. That message lives on. My friend Jim over there, Jimmy used to always say, the message is bigger than the messenger. Absolutely, it is. And my responsibility is, how do I keep that alive? And man, if you love this thing and love what this is about, and you're learning how to do this, be willing to do it. Go on that 12-step call. You know, people ask the difference in AA. I'll tell you one difference was, we had a payphone downstairs. All right? We didn't have cell phones. We didn't even know they would ever exist. That was a thing in the Jetsons cartoon. I didn't, you know, hey, hi, honey, how you doing? Hey, what's going on? You know, and that phone would ring a lot. And usually a lot of times I need a ride to a meeting. Going down to, what was the name of the old halfway house on Main Street? I'm forgetting the name of it. RTC, thank you. Because I know Mike went down there quite a bit picking people up. And, you know, and I need to talk to some alcoholics. On and on. And man, that was such an amazing, powerful tool. Well, it ties in with this. So as I close, I want to thank being asked to do this. I think it was so awesome. I love this format. I think it's really cool. I'm grateful I have been able to be a part of this. The Grove Club, I was telling Nick before this, I grew up here. This is how I grew up. And I love this place. And I'm now also I'm a member of the Burlington 12 and 12 Club, which I love. We got a good thing going out there. Please come out sometime. Check us out. Some of you have. The program, to me, I want to keep that circle that Dick talked about going. That fellowship, this relationship with God, all these great things we have, it always required, the key of this whole thing, all through this book, is willingness. Even when you're unwilling, that's when you really need to be willing. I tell you, man, like, I don't want to do it. Don't, just do it. And you will get a reward you can't imagine. So again, I want to appreciate Sam asking me to do this and interrupting my grass cutting today. That was so awesome. She reminded me, and I needed a break, man. I was keeling over. And I love where this Grove Club is today. And all you out there, you involved in this place should feel good about yourselves and the work you're doing, because this place needs to be here. Thank you for being here, and I will pass.